Welcome back to Clean Techies, the number one podcast for ClimateTech entrepreneurs. This week, I was joined with Ilya Gindin, the co-founder of Comu Labs, which basically makes mycelium, so think of mushrooms, as a sustainable building material. You know, if you're confused about how that thing you cook with turns into a building, trust me, I was too. And when I first discovered this as a material in the space, it kind of blew my mind. Today, we have a bit of a shorter episode for you. As listeners of this show, you guys know that we usually put out longer versions of episodes, about 40 to 50 minutes, but that also is usually with founders who are further along in their journey, can talk about more fundraising rounds, has found product market fit, things like that. Today we're trying out a bit of a new version where this is a bit of a shorter episode, really getting at the heart of an earlier stage startup, highlighting the key points and making it so that you guys get a quick and easy summary within half an hour, which is, pretty different for our normal style. So this is a new thing for us. Let us know what you think about it. If you guys like it, we'll do more of it. Super great thanks to Ilya for coming on and sitting down with us and to talk about, how in the world we're going to see more pizza toppings become building materials of the future. If you're new here, please take a second to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It means the world to us. And as always, enjoy the episode. All right, Ilya, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, hi, Sawmill. Doing good. So, really enjoy being here.
Yeah. We're super happy to have you on. You guys are working on some really exciting stuff I think in a bit of it, you probably know this way better than I do, but a bit of a hot topic right now. So yeah, please introduce yourself. Who are you?
So I'm Ilya, and I'm entrepreneur. Right now, I'm building a startup which is called Comu Labs. So that's a waste-based lumber alternative. And before that, for more than a decade, I've been in a startup world as a product lead or startup founder, mostly in a software. But at some point, I had a burnout and some passion to crafting and learning more about the furniture and materials. And that's how the story for me began, but not yet for the Combi Labs.
Nice. And so, yeah, you spent a lot of time innovating with technology and then you transitioned to Comu. I'll start off hot. Mycelium is a material that sort of hit the climate space by storm. It's a very exciting buzzword almost, but there's some really cool stuff behind it. So why don't we backtrack a little bit? How did you find Mycelium as a product and then decide to start Comu Labs?
So yeah, the story behind was by my co-founder, whose name is Ilya as well. And is a longtime friend of mine, and he started this from the idea of growing edible mushrooms on top of his restaurant chain, and where the waste they had, a lot of copy waste they generated was kind of nutritious thing for potentially growing mushrooms, and especially edible mushrooms. Like he and our chief of science, Alona, they were trying to find the ways to deliver consistent, high quality taste in gastronomic mushrooms, and then that was kind of tricky. So they also tried to play around materials and research what they can do around it. And they came up with the idea of pressing the mycelium and having a high density pressed board. We were sharing some ideas between each other, as being friends, and I've been passionate about fermentation already for a year, just doing some sauerkraut at my home. And he shared me this idea of kind of plywood or made out of mycelium, and showing up me the whole mycelium world, that look at this, fungus can do this, that. And at that time, I had an idea and the problem that a lot of products and materials in furniture space contribute to deforestation, toxic. There are a lot of formaldehydes. And I had my apartment renovation, and I wanted to find if there is a business opportunity, a large business opportunity, to kind of say disrupt the market or make something new for this valuable, and if there is a business potential. So I had an idea of distributed plywood production, but that was more like a software solution. And then Ilya came to me with this material and product, so it completely aligned with my values, and we decided to make a venture out of it.
Do you have any previous experience with, construction, plywood, or was this pretty much like a novel venture for you?
Yeah, it's pretty much novel venture. Previously, my experience was completely like in software, in restaurant or reservation platform. Previously, like an open table competitor, And Ilya's experience comes from gastronomy, building fermentation environments like sourdough bakery, pretty large and successful one. Originally, he started this in St. Petersburg in Russia, and then growing the kombucha production. And so he got experience in building fermentation environments, and I got experience in building products and scaling, businesses as a more like a product person.
So as you're learning about this new industry, then I mean, we haven't really got into it, so maybe you can use this as a good segue into how you're using the mycelium. But how did you pick the domain use case that you're at today?
Yeah, that was primarily by aligning with the values and the passion to natural materials. There was one of the videos actually by Phil, co-founder of MicroWorks. There was one video where they were like burning and testing mycelium, and that impressed me to to take a look more. What is this? How is that possible? Yeah, there are other companies who were in the industry for more than a decade, like Ecovative, MicroWorks, and Mogu, and those companies, they created this kind of a vision of how we can build materials out of the mycelium. And we started actually thinking about cons and pros about different mycelium products like packaging or construction materials like insulation with the pure mycelium. And we found why we want to make this piece of wood, kind of wood, instead of keeping the mycelium as it is. And the reason is that we see it's something that can be more applicable for the mass scale, and it's harder to compete with the cheap solutions like plastic packaging, like for example styrofoam, like some other mycelium companies do. And I think it's great like material itself, but it's so hard to compete in the price and make it affordable. So we find our own niche in this, building something different that other mycelium companies do. There are a few who tried as well, like a similar product, but it brings us the several things that we like about it. First of all, it's mycelium as a technology, the bio natural aspect of this, and also the architecture part. So we have capability working with the design, creativity, architecture, things that we just personally enjoy and love. So it's a combination of technology, design, and nature, and not just industrial technological product, which also great. But for us, it's important to have the ability to express our creativity in the designs, in how we can color it, or how we can create products out of it, create nice chairs that are bended and curved, and etc. That's also part of the process. So enjoying the process is extremely important to stay here for a decade. That's one of the major things to make a decision to make the startup. So am I ready to work for this for the next 10 years at least?
So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're pretty early within your journey, but again, entering sort of nation space, a space that isn't that, it's not like a decade old industry. And also, it's not a space that you've had a lot of experience in. I'm curious what that process was like getting up to speed on the industry, not only because, if you look at, for example,
Mhm.
how different people are taking on net zero concrete, net zero building materials, you have different types of fortified lumbar, timber, net zero concrete. There's so many new building materials out there. So sometimes it's hard to understand what some things are good at versus other materials. In your experience, what is mycelium really good at, and why are you using
Mhm.
it for this specific application?
One of the main and most important mycelium specs, if we can say it like that about the mycelium, is fire retardancy. It helps basically to prevent fire from spreading, which is extremely important in furniture interiors and construction materials. Like especially in our material, well, we grow this mycelium. We call it bricks or mats before we heat press it. This type of pre-grown or like grown material before we press it allows us to mold press. So because we're capable to mold press the parts for furniture or interiors or construction without applying any glues and adhesives, and mycelium works as a binder itself, so we reduce the amount of formaldehydes used in the material. That's the second important advantage. The third one I would name is the ability to be kind of substrate agnostic. So mycelium can digest variety of different feedstock and work, and we can still build board panel or MDF type of product from coconut husks or from rice husks or from leftovers from the wood industry, lumber industry, and that creates the real capability to build this in different continents and source locally. Because there are coconut husks in Asia, but there are not that much of them in Europe, for example.
Hey guys, sorry for the interruption. I just need a few seconds because Soma and I have two quick favors to ask. Putting out the show each week takes about 15 to 20 hours between us, so it's a lot of effort, and it would mean the world to us if you would leave a review and mention your favorite episode. Secondly, if you're not already, go over and subscribe to the podcast on Substack. The content is free, but if you like hanging out with us each week, maybe we're even the kind of guys you'd like to buy a coffee for on occasion, consider becoming a paid subscriber. For the cost of one lavender latte a month, you can help us immensely. Thank you for tuning in consistently and helping us to share our guest stories. Now back to the show.
The source locally part is huge. I mean, that's one of the main issues you see with other materials like timber is thinking about how you source the materials in the first place. So this sounds like a real advantage there. You're an early stage founder and you're going through a lot of the legwork of explaining to people what your technology is, why it's good, and why they should choose it. Right? So I'm curious, what are the common misconceptions that you're coming across when you're having to explain both building new materials, less carbon intensive materials, as well as specifically using essentially mushrooms for buildings?
Yeah, probably. One of the questions could be like, can it get molded? How the mold is one of the first things that pops up in the mind, or is it alive? So, will I have mushrooms in my house? And the simple answer is no. Is not because it's well maybe it's not the best thing to say, but it's actually dead mushroom. I mean, the culture is not living once it's in the final product because we apply high temperatures and it stops the fungus culture to live and grow. Moreover, when the material is being pressed, and we press this like a fruiting body layer on top of it, we have like a biopolymer on top of the material, which is literally a fried mushroom or like a fried mushroom steak, which creates a natural pattern. It's a design part of it, but more important, this biopolymer of a fried mushroom, or you can think about it like if you fry a piece of brie cheese or camembert, this layer prevents moisture from getting inside. It works like as a finished layer. That answers one of the questions we've been asked. For example, is it water resistant? And it's water resistant once it's pressed in a mold from all the areas. Right now we're at the stage where we press just two parts. We're still developing this, but that's one of the important advantages. And we're also being asked about how we can color it, or you can apply any kind of lock or oils or something to customize it. And the simple answer is yes. But you can do, and we've tried to do that. But it's also important what kind of paint or something you apply, because if we apply paint, the compostability of the material it starts beginning to be toxic for environment if you compost it with a toxic paints. So we need to find out some more healthy for environment ways to dye it instead of painting, and apply some other ways to bring the color into the material. And it is also possible, but it's like second step. Right now is just brownish caramelized color because of the frying and heating process.
That's so interesting. I mean, I wouldn't really expect. I still remember one of the things he said was like, "Is it alive?" I wouldn't really expect there to be that much, a lack of knowledge about this, or maybe not even a lack of knowledge, because I guess that's not a question I would think to ask. But it's interesting to see that that's a concern, right? People are at that level of understanding that I don't know what it is I'm putting in this.
Yeah, from those ones, so there are basically some people who don't know anything about like mycelium materials like much. Maybe they've heard like in some magazines or something, even they are in architecture firms or maybe they are in furniture brands, but they normally don't have that deep knowledge. And there are some people like in the industry of biomaterials who obviously know what is mycelium, and I don't need to explain core of the capabilities and advantages of this. But moreover, especially what differentiates our material is from other mycelium products and it's actually screwable, it's machinable, so you can work as a maker or as a lumber enthusiast with this, or as a furniture company you can screw it and you can add some joints if you need to, which is not really a case with mycelium, even it's grown in some high density feedstock, because it starts like crushing or crumbling in a typical mycelium non high density products like insulation, or which are great and have some their own advantages. And mycelium absorbs CO2 emissions while it stores CO2 in it. And when we heat press, of course, we release some of the CO2. But our current calculation still shows that we are almost 100 times better in CO2 emissions than MDF. And we still capable to remain at carbon negative, even when we apply heat press, just because we use waste streams, and mycelium still absorbs CO2, and there are other things related to energy consumption, lower energy consumption versus plywood and MDF. So just the pressing itself creates some CO2 emissions, but it doesn't affect our production in the way it puts us in creating a lot of carbon. So we still can be carbon negative.
One of the main things that I feel like people come across only as when they're really, really deep into the material space is the way that you have to think about your revenue model, right? And it's not only about producing the material, it's how often do you produce it? How do you work with your customers? And it becomes like a very long, honestly, logistics oriented problem. Right. So I'm curious, as a founder who it sounds like you and your founding team, not necessarily coming from the space, but some similar restaurateur experience, for example, that gives you some, exposure to supply chains. How are you thinking about the growth of your company in terms of, okay, I'm producing this essentially, mycelium-based substitute for material. How are you thinking about taking that to market?
Basically, simply to say, we're going first higher margin premium products in furniture. It's like you can think about Vitra or Herman Miller, or those kind of brands we want to target at first, in order to give the high valued design product, and then moving to more mass market interiors and building materials. But the important part here to mention is we're not trying to compete with the commodities. So we choose the business model where we don't want to compete directly with the MDF, a plywood producer, as a commodities like producer, just selling the boards either on the shelves in hardware stores or either shipping them directly to different kind of companies, from furniture to construction. More our business model is slightly different, but just slightly. We just compress the production cycle, and instead of producing lumber boards, as I mentioned before, we can mold press. So instead of selling the boards, we sell finished parts. So instead of selling pieces to make a chair, we actually selling an already pressed chair back or seating part, or combine the unibody of it. So that allows us to cut the production line, supply chain line. We just skip the step of creating the board, moving them to some other location, and bending them into the chair. Instead, we we can just press it right into the chair. And that actually cuts a lot of the costs and makes our material and our parts not just competitive on the price, but being even lower on the price than the plywood.
Yeah, that makes, I mean, it's interesting to see. So, especially going towards the high value, high margin products, you create, the ability to become sort of a niche application or niche use, but it all factors almost as exposure to the market, right? And you need that kind of flexibility when you're working with high margin products that you can then take to the mass market, right? So that's really interesting. I'm curious when you think about, we're kind of like rounding out all the images, all the parts of this company, as you think about scaling Comu Labs, especially with this growth strategy in mind, some of the challenges you've identified with Mycelium, how do you think about bringing in new talent? What's on top of your mind and how are you scouting, the next generation of essentially Comu Lab entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's that's something that I'm just yeah, I want to talk about. The core thing is how we treat right now our small team of four and ourselves and our values. And the core of it is the sustainability vision, which is broader than just developing sustainable for environment product. It involves major two components. One is financial part of it and the health of our team, mental health of like people personally, or the whole health of our team. Financially, that means that we want to invest the money, grow sustainably so we can sustain for years and not to die, be very smart on our spending burn rate, how we navigate our venture way, because there are a lot of stories, and in general venture industry is built around high risk, and that means that most of the shutdowns of startups are related to either founder team conflicts or just running out of money, because it's pretty often founders create a lot of burn rate and they need either to raise the next round to cover existing costs or fire people, which creates other unhealthy environment. So we take it seriously to not build unhealthy environment where we come up to the state where we need either to fire people or either to shut down the project because of running out of money, or just raise the money to close our financial issues. So, and that creates the internal entrepreneurial open kind of culture where we open about everything, every aspect in our team, and building people around us who both enjoy the way we work and the vision of building houses out of the mycelium. So that creates the entrepreneurial spirit in our team, which is, we think, is our own way to build a unicorn or whatever it's called in a sustainable way. So from all the perspective of our company, because I think customers won't believe us in the future if we developing and selling kind of sustainable for environment product, but at the same time creating a lot of burnouts and having a lot of financial issues, unstable in different kind of positions. I think we should take importance of that because it creates our own brand as well, from HR brand or from other perspective.
I think that's really well said. I mean, it's especially being so early. I feel like a lot of the people we get on the podcast are usually a little bit later, so you get to hear about how the culture is nurtured and how some of their hiring process has gone. But for you being at the very beginning of it, you get to sort of live out the culture that, especially for the next couple of hires before you scale up rapidly, you get to really make sure that your culture is enforced. So I think
Sure.
it's great to hear how passionate you are about that.
Yeah, because like we are so investors going to invest in us, talking to us, or people joining our team. We are the first ones, me and my co-founder and core employees, like right now in our team. We are the first ones building this culture, and we are the ones who are going to lead it in the beginning. That's very important. That's why we take seriously our personal lives as well, because I've been in startups for several years. My co-founder have been in business for many years. We know there are ups and downs, and we need to hold on.
Definitely. And as we come up, we've kind of gone all the way from, what you're doing, the topic of the industry, you as a person and your own inspiration. We've kind of gone through a lot of it, but you guys are solving a huge problem, and the problem unfortunately isn't solved yet, right? So there's a lot of challenges ahead of you. As we come up to sort of like the last part of this episode, I'd love to ask you, what are the major challenges that are ahead of you and Comu Labs?
Yeah, I want to be probably honest and open to the audience here. So one of the main challenges, I think, for many deep tech startups in the beginning is the gap in your product, money you can ask from the clients for pilots or sales. There is such gap always in any startup, even software, but here this gap is just larger in, like, financially. It's larger in a time manner. By that I mean, okay, we try to sell chairs. How many chairs we can supply? Are we capable to produce high quality chairs right now, or still we need to fix a lot of production issues, jiggles and etc.? And this is one of the main important things: is the scalability of the technology is available, but we need the money for it, and we need money way more upfront before we can produce. And of course, venture industry can help with this. Like, investors can help to cover the initial investment on some capital expenses to go through this challenge. But also, the other important challenge, I think, is how industries are really prepared for the new materials. I mean, either it's furniture, either it's construction. Are they just talking about it? Are they willing it? Or are they looking for a new solution? Sometimes the problem is to define what is really going on. And to do that, there is only one answer: just go and talk to customers and make customer interviews and understand whether they just talking about their sustainability or they really want new material that is just going to be better at all the aspects than the MDF and plywood, and they are open to test and give it a try.
Really well said. I mean, that problem is facing climate tech founders, across all of hardware and deep tech. Figuring out who really is going to back you given these, unique financing conditions, as well as, how do you as a founder navigate that in those fundraising conversations and keep the fundraisers, the funders themselves optimistic and believing in your vision. And I think, with the material that you're working on, everything we've heard, part of it is almost even fighting a perception problem and just overcoming that as a challenge. So, look, Ilya, this has been amazing. I feel like it's been really great getting to break down what you guys are working on, how it fits into the overall climate problem, and why we should all be excited about it. Before we sign off, I'd love to hand it over to you. Where can the audience find you?
So yeah, audience can find me on either LinkedIn. It's pretty much easy to find me as Ilya Gindin. You can find me on Instagram. However, my current Instagram is mostly filled with like partially Russian and English. But I'm still open to my audience to follow me. That's more like a personal. Well, you can find me there. And of course, I totally recommend anyone checking our website and just take a look at how the material looks like. You can just email me, and I'll be happy to, to talk personally and show our material, or to ship a sample to some of you if you're interested. Especially if you're our potential client or investor, you can really touch it, experience it, or even try to break it. It's hard to break it.
Nice. That's good. I would hope so. Amazing. So you heard it here. If you want some mushrooms, if you want some mycelium, just make sure to message Ilya. Ilya, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Somil. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope listeners can enjoy this conversation and learn something new. So if you have any more questions, feel free to contact me and reach out.
Perfect.